covers up the drain, the storm drain. He makes it smaller than what it was.
I did not know that.
Yes. So they're busy suppressing evidence of the shot from the storm drain and the shot from the driver, which I believe was simultaneous, hit Kennedy at the same time. That's why you have his head exploding, flesh going one direction up and one direction back over to the left, one direction back to on the trunk of the limousine. There's two kill shots that are involved here. One from the driver, one from the drain. So this is deliberately covered up by all the cover-up knights involved in the investigation.
Now, let's go back to Abraham Zapruder. You talked about cameras being confiscated from witnesses along the route. Why would the government have allowed, the investigators have allowed Zapruder's film to, why would they have let him keep a copy?
Very good question. Very good. Why would they let him keep his film? Why would they even let him stand there and film this when they were running people off the grassy knoll and other places? Mm-hmm. Why would they let him stand there? Because he was a contract agent for the CIA. They wanted this film, and you can know that the original film they have parties up in Rockefeller Center, and they invite their friends up and say, let's watch Kennedy get his head blown off as they're passing around the drinks. How dare he interfere with the temple power of the Pope?
It's interesting you mention that because there's a book that's available on the Internet. Actually, it was a rough draft of a manuscript called The Last Circle by Sherry Seymour. And she mentioned a meeting with a gentleman on the West Coast whose name is escaping me at the moment. I'll probably think of it as soon as we stop the interview, who showed her what he claimed to be the unedited original version of the Zapruder film, which showed clearly what you described, the driver turning and firing that kill shot. I read that for the first time just a couple of months ago, and that was my first, and I've said before on this program, I'm coming late to the party with a lot of these things. That was my first exposure to the idea that the driver had actually been the one to pull the trigger. So
thank you for that reference, though.
Oh, yeah, I'll send you a link to that after the program, because the text of her her manuscript is which doesn't deal with the JFK assassination. This is just something that she mentioned in passing in meeting with this fellow who is a CIA operative and involved in some other nefarious deeds. But the point was that you could very likely assure the cooperation of anyone in a position of government authority, especially, say, a newly elected president, by inviting him to such a meeting and showing him such a film to make the point. Play ball.
That's right. That's right. There has never been a disobedient president except Nixon from that time, and Nixon had too much stuff on him because he was part of the assassination, so they just railroaded him out. But there has not been a disobedient president really since. They all know. And it's that way, really. It's been that way in Russia. There hasn't been a disobedient premier there. So this was a demonstration to the world that if you mess with us, we're going to kill you in broad daylight, and we're going to get away from it with it in the supposedly freest country in the world with the freedom of the press. It's quite an intimidating film when they show that.
So the purpose then of the Zapruder film was to hide it in plain sight. Here we've got this film that's been turned over to Time Warner, and of course you can trust Time Magazine, a reputable journal of news and information, and as we examine the film, we don't see anything except what they want us to see.
That's right. That's exactly right. And remember, the American people did not see the film until it was subpoenaed by Jim Garrison in 1969. It was locked up in Time Life for 5 years in a safe. So we owe much to Jim Garrison and his research that he did for us, and he has provided the evidence that there would be a successful reinvestigation and a proving that the Knights of Malta, the Vatican, Archbishop of New York did this enough to expel the entire Roman hierarchy and the Jesuit order and the Knights of Malta out of this country. And that's what they don't want. That's why the Jesuits run the Department of Justice. That's why they had men like Patrick Fitzgerald to rat hole and to suppress investigations like the 1993 World Trade City bombing, and like the Bush's advisor Karl Rove. He's a free man now, thanks to Patrick Fitzgerald, that Jesuit coadjutor. So they control the Justice Department, they control the FBI, and they will make sure that there will never be a successful investigation of their assassinations or of their crimes.
Speaking of that now, in the months and years that followed the assassination of John F. Kennedy, a number of key witnesses and pieces of evidence disappeared. Can you summarize that for us?
Well, there were, I forget, 18 material witnesses, something along that line, who died strangely within, 3 years after the assassination. This can be seen in a movie called Executive Action. It was put out in 1973. Supposedly George de Moorstill had a hand in this production.
Executive Action, was that a movie with...
Burt Lancaster.
Okay.
And you know the actor that they used to portray the man responsible for the assassination? The actor that they used, he was an older gentleman who appeared to be the one who would give the final command for the killing of Kennedy. His name was Will Greer.
That's right.
Will Greer.
Yeah.
It's an innuendo.
Grandpa Walton.
It's an innuendo to show that the real assassin was William Greer. That's why they chose the actor Will Greer to play the part of, I think it's Mr. Thomason or something.
How interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It was Will Geer was his name. Geer.
No. Greer.
I'm looking at the Internet Movie Database right now. Will Geer with
Geer.
no R.
Is it Geer?
Yeah, Geer. Okay. Played the role of Ferguson in the movie, but
Ferguson. That's right. Ferguson. Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting in that that happens to be my
close.
Ferguson happens to be my lovely wife's maiden name. So,
nice.
But I assure you, we had nothing to do with anything we're discussing today. But
Geer. All right.
But still, that is awfully close and a perhaps a sideways reference to what had been done in Dallas on that day. And it is. We certainly believe, and there may be listeners who would disagree or think that we're stretching a point here, but we certainly believe that Hollywood is used and the entertainment industry is used to plant thoughts, memes, guide public discourse even into important public events through the way they're portrayed in film. I mean, that's the reason that there's such a hoo-ha about the Da Vinci Code. It appears when you watch Oliver Stone's film JFK that you're seeing a bold examination of the events in Dealey Plaza that day. But as you point out, what you're actually seeing is a very clever deception that de-emphasizes the role of William Geer and whoever was in the storm drain.
Yeah, and William Greer, that's right.
Yeah,
William Greer and the driver and whoever's in the storm drain. Some people said it was Johnny Rosselli in the storm drain, but it doesn't really matter. The people that de-emphasizes that, it puts all your attention on the grassy knoll, and then from there, who knows? But they don't want to begin to look at the other facts, like when Garrison sought to subpoena Allen Dulles, they would not deliver the subpoena. It would not be delivered for him to come. So this Allen Dulles, a Knight of Malta, whose nephew, by the way, today is a Knight of Malta and a Cardinal and a Jesuit by the name of Avery Dulles, who lives and works at Fordham University. So that they are not going to be allowed to do this. Jim Garrison also wanted to interview Major Louis Mortimer Bloomfield, a veteran of the OSS who resided in Montreal. He could not be interviewed because this guy is one of the 11 directors in a company in Montreal that's actually based in Rome, and he is also involved with the World Trade Center, the Centro Mondiale Commerciale, whose sole purpose is that, quote, for Rome will recover once again her position as center of the civilized world. And that's an article of Mae Brussel, the Nazi connection to the JFK assassination. So yes, these very key men were not allowed to be subpoenaed and come to trial. And for Garrison to actually serve Clay Shaw and get him into the court, that was a miracle that he actually was able to pull that off. He had a Knight of Malta in there. He had a highest clearance in the CIA in there. He's former OSS. He's a friend of Borghese and all the knights in Italy. He, in his private phone book, he has the knights of number of several knights, and he's also involved in human sacrifice, as Garrison discovered when he was looking at his place in New Orleans, and we have that on page 169 of Garrison's book. I wouldn't say human sacrifice, but some sort of torture with blood involved on page 169. And I'll read that for you. It says, probably the most interesting single item seized in the course of Shaw's arrest was his address book. It offered some insight into the proclivity of developing casual relationships at lofty levels of European aristocracy. How many Americans have in their address books such fascinating names and addresses as the Marquis Giuseppe Re Vincina in Italy, or the Baron Raphael de Bainfield, Villa Tripkovich of Teresa, Italy, Sir Stephen Runciman, well, he was the Archbishop of Canterbury, Princess Jacqueline Chimay, Lady Margaret d'Arcy, and a few other things. And then he goes on to say, and also found by our investigators at Shaw's luxurious appointed carriage house in the French Quarter were a few more novel items, including 5 whips, several lengths of chain, and a black hood matching black cape. The whips had on them what happened to be dried blood. In the bedroom, about 2.5 feet apart, 2 large hooks had been screwed into the ceiling. These accoutrements hardly were inculpatory in themselves. Different people have different hobbies. Had Shaw lived in an earlier era, however, the list of nobles in his address book might have included the Marquis de Sade. Yeah, he was a very bizarre character. He was the guy, if for you listeners, if you've seen the movie JFK, he was the character portrayed by Tommy Lee Jones in the movie. And there are a couple of scenes in there that are a little over the top, but would seem to be borne out by the evidence from Clay Shaw's apartment. We're almost out of time, Brother Eric, and it's gone by far too quickly. If you could summarize, what do you see as the effect on America of the assassination of John F. Kennedy? The effect of America on America is this. It was not solved as it should have been, with the blame being put on the Pope of Rome and his Jesuits. Therefore, they have greatly increased their power. They are now in complete control of this government, and they brought down not the World Trade Center. They caused 9/11 through Knight of Malta, George J. Tenet. They've now got a papal crusade against the Muslim peoples, and it's not going to end, according to Newt Gingrich, between 30 and 50 years.